and welcome everyone to the daily news analysis of 3rd of October 2023। तो चलिए आज का इम्पोर्टेंट आर्टिकल्स हिंदी न्यूज़पेपर से देख लेते हैं। पहला जो है मेडिसिन नोबेल 2023 goes to ड्यू who paved the way for mRNA COVID vaccines at 36%। EBC's largest group in Bihar shows caste study, then capturing the range, building the bricks for future. World reported twice as many cholera cases in 2022 as in 2021, according to WHO, countering death in India's prisons. Then IAF likely to induct Astra B air-to-air missile by year-end. Then revision to July fuel shipment value leaves overall export figures. Then what are the Lagrange points and what is the Aditya L1 headed to 1? ये साइंस का पेज है। ए ब्रीफ हिस्ट्री ऑफ नोबेल प्राइज, ये साइंस, ये दोनों साइंस का पेज है। ठीक है, चलिए देखते हैं। मेडिसिन नोबेल 2023 goes to ड्यू who paved the way for mRNA COVID vaccines। The 2020 the 2023 Nobel Prize in Psychology or Medicine has been awarded to Hungarian biochemistry Katalin Karikó and American physician scientist Drew Weissman announced the names on Monday. The Royal Swedish Academy of Science said they had been feted for discoveries of concerning nucleoside-based modifications that enable the development of effective mRNA vaccine against COVID-19. Dr. Kariko is only the 13th woman to win the prize. That the citation mention the pandemic shows the effect mRNA vaccine had on its evolution as well as how the global disaster became an opportunity for the vaccine technology to showcase its potential. mRNA stands for messenger RNA, a type of molecule that carries instructions from DNA to a cell's cytoplasm where those messages are read to produce various proteins. In the late 1980s, scientists realized that mRNA could become the basis for a new kind of vaccines if some hurdle could be overcome. The idea was to inject the body with a modified mRNA that would instruct cells to build a certain protein which could then provoke the body's immune system to attack it as well as prepare itself to encounters with the same protein in future. This protein could be something produced by a virus such as the spike protein of SARS-CoV-2, but the mRNA would have to survive its journey inside the body and be able to enter a cell. Mr. Kariko and Dr. Weissman began to collaborate in the late 1990s. They and other scientists published many studies elucidating the steps from delivering mRNA into body to the immune system responding. But one problem remained: the immune system sensed the system as synthetic mRNA to be a foreign substance that needed to be eliminated, but not the cell's mRNA. Why? A study they published in 2005 with Michael Buxton and Hoping NI had the answer. The cell's mRNA underwent chemical reactions that modified it in certain ways, whereas the synthetic mRNA remained unchanged. RNA is made up of smaller molecules called bases. The Dew report that when they modified some of these bases in the synthetic mRNA and delivered it to cells, the cells produced more provocative proteins that they did without the modification. They had found out how a foreign mRNA could enter a body and its cells without getting off the alarm bells. They published two more studies that set the stage for the use of an mRNA platform for a new kind of vaccine in 2020. The COVID-19 pandemic droned on the world, and mRNA vaccines played a pivotal role, if so, if also one overtaken by the dubious virtues of vaccine nationalism in lowering its death tolls. Currently, scientists are exploring their use against influenza, dengue, and some cancers and autoimmune diseases. The next जो है at 36%, EBS largest group in Bihar shows caste study. Months away from the Lok Sabha election in 2024, the Bihar government on Monday released the report of a caste survey conducted in state, saying it is only compiled data and no analysis of it has been done yet. Today, on the auspicious occasion of Gandhi Jayanti, the data of the caste-based census conducted in Bihar have been published. The proposal for the survey was passed on unanimously in the legislature. Chief Minister Nitish Kumar posted on the microblogging site X. All 9 political parties in the assembly will now be called for a meeting to apprise them of the report. Caste breakdown. The report said the other backward classes OBCs make up 27.1 to 86% of the population of the state. The extremely backward class EBCs 36.0148%, the scheduled caste 19.6518%, and the scheduled tribes 1.6824%. The upper castes make up 15.5224%, Hindus from 81.9986% of the population, and Muslims is 17.7088%. The total population is over 13 crore. The survey report Bihar Jati आधारित गणना 2022 Bihar caste based survey 2022 says the Yadavas make up 14.26% of the state population. Kosova has 4.27% and Kurmis 2.87%. The Musahar caste makes up 3% of the state population and Brahmin is 3.66%. The upper caste Kasa community comes to 0.68 population of the state. The Congress called upon the center to hold a similar exercise at the national level immediately. Former party president Rahul Gandhi said the census has proved that 84% of the people in the state belong to OBC, SC and STs, and their share should be according to their population. Senior Bihar BJP leader Sushil Kumar Modi said the party is currently analyzing the report and it is only after that any comment over it will be made. Deputy Chief Minister Tejas Yadav said the whole country would voice a demand for such a survey. Senior BJP leader and Union Minister Giriraj Singh said caste census will do nothing more than spread confusion among the poor and the public of the state. The caste census report card is just an eyewash. Then nationwide caste census India. Citing the findings of the Bihar caste survey, leaders of the Indian National Developmental Inclusive Alliance India on Monday reiterated their demand for a countrywide caste census to ensure social justice to deprived caste classes. Then next आता है capturing the rain. India needs all weather insurance against vagaries of a global climate. For the first time since 2018, India has reported a deficit monsoon from June to September this year. India received 82 centimeter of rainfall, nearly 6% lower than the 89 centimeter that is considered normal beginning April. There were enough indicators that the monsoon would be subdued with an El Nino on the horizon. This cyclical warming of the central and eastern Pacific Oceans usually correspond to a decline in rainfall over India, particularly in northwest between 2019 and 2022. The Indian monsoon was significantly impacted by the converse phenomenon, a cooling La Nina that sometimes is associated with above normal rainfall by those metrics. The expectation of a normal monsoon in 2023 were muted However, the experience of the monsoon this year was far from the ordinary. About 9% of the country received excess rainfall, with 18% getting deficient and the rest of the country normal rainfall. While on one hand, August, the second most important monsoon month, posted a third less than its normal. Several states in in North India which were expecting minimal rainfall were beloved following multiple episodes of record rainfall. July, for instance, saw exceptionally heavy rainfall in Chandigarh, Haryana, Himachal Pradesh, resulting in floods and landslides. Several cities were left grappling with serious flooding over several days. Cloud bursts were reported in Himachal Pradesh in August. It is worthwhile to note here that these episodes of the intense rain were due to so-called western disturbances that are extra-tropical storms from the Mediterranean region and normally not expected to play a major part of in the monsoon. Thus, these are fingerprints of the wide-ranging impacts of anthropogenic warming. At the other end of the spectrum, where drought-like conditions in Maharashtra, extreme water stress was also reported out of Chhattisgarh, Bihar, Karnataka, where, in the case of Karnataka, matters came to a head with neighboring Tamil Nadu over the sharing of water from Kaveri River. The India Meteorological Department has also forecasted normal northwest monsoon from October to December and normal to above normal rainfall over large parts of northwest India and south peninsular India. The signs are there of increased rains in several parts of South India. The spatial and temporal variance of the monsoon reiterates the needs to invest in more resilient infrastructure that can be an all-weather insurance against the increasingly unpredicted vagaries of the global climate. The pattern in the recent years is to improve forecast models that are better able to warn of significant changes in weather a week or two ahead than having approaches that fail to capture the dynamics of the Indian monsoon. More money and expertise should be directed towards this. The next is building bricks for future. In August, six new members were inducted into the BRICS grouping in South Africa. While many believe that this meeting did not have a productive results, we need to look at BRICS from the perspective of how it has evolved rather than the results of one meeting. Economic compulsion. First, it is important to note that BRICS emerged out of an economic compulsion. It does not provide military or security support to various countries, is not involved in the policing of nations, and does not provide peacekeepers. Compare this to, say, NATO, European allies, and Canada have invested an extra $350 billion since 2014, with 8 consecutive years of increased defense spending. The GDP of BRICS is now 36% of the global GDP, and the population of its members will be 47% of the world population by 2050. Therefore, it is important to look at the long-term opportunities that this group presents. More members could be inducted, which means that BRICS was a serious challenge to the dominance of the G7, comprising Canada, France, Germany, Italy, Japan, the UK, and the US. Second two members of BRICS and China and India, which together contain one-third of the world's population. The two countries are the fastest growing economies and are expected to be among the top three economies of the world by 2030. Both countries understand that globally bilateral ties have seen a transformation following the formation of economic blocs such as the European Union or ASEAN. As such blocs accelerate trade and investment, while India and China have bilateral challenges at the political and diplomatic level since their standoff at Doklam in 2017. Trade between two countries has continued to grow significantly. That Chinese President Xi Jinping skipped the G20 summit in New Delhi will not impact this economic cooperation. We should never forget that economic and business terms, politics, search and thoughts for an alternative. Third, there has been some polarization between the US and other parts of the world. This was especially becoming evident during the Trump administration. Many countries have issues with the US stance against the China. The US seems keen to impose tariff and created other barriers to restrict China's expansion in trade and investment. China has made strides in certain areas like communication, infrastructure, and electric mobility too, which US would like to contain. This is expected to get worse. Therefore, countries want to be part of a grouping that involves China too. In the BRICS grouping, China is not a dominant player. Democratic countries such as India, South Africa, Brazil provide the counterweight. Similarly, the way refugees are being treated in Europe do not give a positive perspective of a world that is getting increasingly globalized. Countries such as the US have floated World Trade Organization rules and have not penalized for the same. This means that countries have to look for other arrangements. The search for an alternative, such as the non-aligned movement to tackle Cold War challenges, has given hope of a new order. Thus, many countries are applying for membership to this group. 6 new members were inducted in the last meet. As BRICS grows, there will be many trade, business, and investment protocols created, much like what we see in different free trade agreements of or economic blocs. Fourth, the US dollar has been the dominant global currency. All demise of traveler checks of people carrying authorized currency that was equivalent to dollar bills, with digital platform making inroads into many countries. Digital currency is clearly the future. Both India and China have made great progress in this field. They are far ahead of the US and Europe. Both India and China are pushing for more trade, investment, and business in their currencies, and together, though BRICS, they can push their own currencies and as alternative currencies to the dollar. India and China interests in the long run converge. Their short-term challenges will not deter this convergence. Freedom from the US dollar is a big reason for convergence. Continent of the future. Finally, the continent that promises economic growth this century is Africa. The way France has traveled in Niger, or the manner in which migrants have been treated in Europe, provided Africans with a negative image about Europe. The fact is that while Europe talks about connectivity, a state of Gibraltar crossing is still not in place, partly due to geopolitics and partly due to other concerns. Via restriction have pushed Africans to to travel to China and see its development more closely than Europe or the US. This makes them believe in China's potential. African countries continue to talk about the freedom they need in choosing partner for investment or trade. India proposed full membership for the African Union at the G20 summit in New Delhi. It is trying to push its own reach within Africa. BRICS will be again Bricks will again be out of the news until the next summit. However, each summit generates some spark that provides the building blocks for different networks of people for the future. This is a group for the long run. After all, way back in 2003, even Goldman Sachs saw the potential of this grouping and the opportunity it presents, the stating that if things go right in less than 40 years, the BRICS economic together could be larger than the G6 in US dollar terms. Then next जो है world reported twice as many cholera cases in 2022 as in 2021 according to WHO. Cholera is a waterborne disease caused by two strains called O1 and O139 of the bacteria Vibrio cholera. Of these, O1 is responsible for almost all outbreaks. Outbreaks of the 0 O139 are rare and none have been recorded outside Asia, according to the World Health Organization's weekly epidemiological record published on September 22. The world reported more than twice as many cholera cases in 2022 as it did in 2021. That one. Between these years, more than twice as many countries also reported at least 10,000 suspected as well as confirmed cases of cholera. Both these trends suggest a reversal of a short-term trend of decline prevalence since 2019. The reversal also complicated a target of the WHO specified in 2017 to reduce the number of cholera deaths worldwide by 90% by 2030. According to the United Nations Health Body, cholera transmission is closely linked to inadequate access to clean water and sanitation facilities. Vibrio cholera bacteria also favor warmer waters with lower salinity. All these conditions are created as a result of climate change, which increase the likelihood of floods, heatwaves, in intense monsoonal rains and storms, and the duration of warm periods and war. The epidemiological report blamed the uptake on the decline of the COVID-19 pandemic and its restriction limited investment in providing care to those most vulnerable to the disease. The effect of climate change and increasing conflict. A 2021 study published in the journal The Lancet Planetary Health concluded that the length of the coastline favorable to the development of Vibrio bacteria could increase by 38,000 km by 2100 over the 1850 to 2014 average. In the SSP5 8.5 emission scenario, a June 2023 study by researchers at the University of Florida found that Vibrio pathogens have a unique ability to stick to microplastics and that these microbes might be adapting to plastic, including in the open ocean, according to a statement by the National Science Foundation in response to the world's growing cholera burden. And while waiting for investment in manufacturing to bear fruits, the body that manages the emergency stockpiles of the oral cholera vaccine sank the recommended vaccine regime from the two doses to one. According to the report, most cholera cases continue to be reported from Africa and Asia, with Europe accounting for a few imported cases. Chart 2 and Map 3 in Africa cases were more spread out in 2022 than they were in 2021, which the report qualifies as no single country having reported more than 25% of all the cases and 30% of all deaths. The report also says that between 2021 and 2022, the continent reported 29% fewer cases and 52% fewer deaths. This is not the good news. It appears to be in 2021, Nigeria had a large cholera outbreak and accounted 78% of all cases in Africa that year. But in 2022, both the numbers of the cases and of deaths in all the other countries that reported data more than doubled. Cameroon and Malawi in particular reported over 5,000 cases after more than a decade. Similarly, in Asia, both Lebanon and Syria have reported cases at all for the first time in a decade. Yemen had reported nearly 90% of the cases in West Asia in 2021 but did not report data in 2022. In Afghanistan, more than half of the all cases were among those aged 5 years. But there is one silver lining, whereas 20% of the countries that declared cases in 2021 reported using rapid diagnostics tests, 56% did so in 2022. The next we are counting death in India's prison. Counting death in India's prison. In August this year, the Supreme Court Committee on Prison Reform found suicide to be the leading cause of unnatural deaths other than the aging or illness among Indian prisoners, with UP recording the highest number of suicides between 2017 and 21. The report stated that The number of custodial deaths has been a steady rise since 2019 and 2021 has recorded the highest number of deaths so far. On the other hand, natural deaths 1879 people in 2021 were due to aging and illness. How are prison's deaths classified? Every year, prison deaths are identified as natural and or unnatural by the Prison Statistics India report published by the Natural Crime Record Bureau NCRBC in 2021. A total of 2,116 prisoners died in judicial custody with almost 90% of cases recorded as natural deaths. Aging and illness account for natural deaths. Illness has been further categorized into diseases such as heart conditions, HIV, tuberculosis, and cancer. As the prison's population swells, recorded natural deaths have increased from 1,424 in 2016 to 1879 in 2021. Unnatural deaths are more diverse in classification. They include suicide due to hanging, poisoning, self-inflicted injury, drug overdose, electro electrocution, etc., and death due to inmates assault by outside elements, fire, negligence, or excess and accidental deaths such as natural calamities, earthquakes, snake bites, drowning, accidental fall, burn injury, drug alcohol consumption. The suicide rate among inmates was found to be more than twice the rate recorded in the general population as per a report by the Commonwealth Human Rights Initiative. Additionally, while the NCRB data documents the socio-economic background of the inmates population, the caste or religious profile of the people who died is unknown. What have the court said? In a landmark Supreme Court judgment that drew attention to hostile prisons infrastructure which results in custodial deaths, Justice M. B. Lokur said that the NCRB distinction between the natural and the unnatural deaths is unclear. For example, if a prisoner dies due to a lack of proper medical attention or timely medical attention, would that be classified as a natural death due to illness or an unnatural death due to negligence? He asked. This ambiguity, coupled with the fact that prison deaths are underreported and rarely investigated, results in a majority of deaths being classified as natural. Media reports have noted during the pandemic, the PSI report classified deaths due to COVID-19 as natural death. At the time, the occupancy rate of prisons was 118% of their capacity, and almost 40,000 more under trials were held in prisons in comparison with the previous year. The same year, the sanctioned strength of medical staff was around 1 is to 125, but in reality, there was just one staff member to look after 219 inmates. Moreover, as Justice Lakur and previous judgments have pointed out, the issue of custodial deaths, why they occur and how they are investigated, is intertwined with how congested prisons are. If inmates have access to medical help, whether there is adequate staff, and whether the available staff is properly trained to aid inmates, only 5% of expenditure is spent on medical facilities as per the PSI 2021 report. Moreover, between 2016 and 2021, money earmarked for spending on inmates was underutilized. 6,727.30 crore was the average national expenditure against a sanctioned 7,619 crore rupees in 2021. The infrastructure deficiency are both a cause and effect of closeness and neglect the health of individual in jail custody. Scholars Meenakshi D'Cruz argued in the Indian Journal of Medical Ethics. She notes that the refusal to provide care results in unnatural deaths inside prisons which are otherwise ascribed to natural causes. The neglect could be medical, psychological, or continual denial of access to healthcare, food or safety. In 2012, 32 years old Pratap Guet was arrested for rioting and house trespassing and died a month after entering jail. His apparent cause of natural death for postmortem report was pulmonary coats with military tuberculosis of liver and spleen. In seropositive cases, however, as MSD Cruz noted, there was no evidence of whether a medical officer visited Mr. Kute or if there was a health screening at the time of admission. The police officer refused to transfer Mr. Kute to a hospital for advanced care, stating that the police would have no grievance if the life of the deceased Pratap was in danger. A bench of Bombay High Court in 2023 censored this chain of negligence, which reflected the total callous and insensitive mindset of the police authorities as well as the jail authorities. How are deaths investigated since 1993? The NCRB is required to intimate a custodial death within 24 hours following by postmortem report, magisterial inquest report or videography report of the postmortem. Further, if an inquiry by the Commission into custodial death and discloses negligence by a public servant, the Commission recommends to authorities of the central state government for paying compensation to the next of kin NOK and also for initiation of disciplinary prosecutions against the hearing service public servants. The Home Ministry said in response to a Lok Sabha question in 2022. The same response noted that only disciplinary action was taken between 2021 against the hearing officials. In case of custodial rape and death, the Code of Criminal Procedure also requires compulsory judicial magisterial inquiry in case of an executive magistrate inquiry. The National Human Rights Commission (NHRC) in 2010, however, weakened the legal requirement to say inquiry by a judicial magistrate is not mandatory when there is no suspension or foul play or where there is no evidence or allegations of an offence. Mr. D. Cruz noted the need for clear and reliable documentation, greater transparency and accountability. Only a robust reporting system can demarcate how many natural deaths result from pre-existing issues and how many from conditions developed in prisons, whether the treatments was given and whether it was adequate, he said. What has government done so far? The Supreme Court in 1996 judgment articulated the social obligation towards prisons health, noting that they suffer from a double handicap. First, the prisons do not enjoy the access of medical expertise that free citizens have. Their incarcerations places limitation on such access to no physician of choice, no second opinion, and few if any specialists. Secondly, because of the condition of their incarcerations, inmates are exposed to more health hazards than free citizens. The Model Vision Manual of 2016 and the Mental Health Act of 2017 outline inmates' right to healthcare, which include adequate investment in healthcare facilities, setting up mental health units, training officers to provide basic and emergency care, and formulating suicide prevention programs to thwart such instances. In light of rising suicide cases in the NHRC in June this year issued an exhaustive 21-page advisory to states highlighting that suicides arise out of both medical and mental health issues. The Supreme Court Committee on Prison Reforms made similar recommendation as an infrastructural issue common to all is the need to scale both the quantity and quantitative staff, as several reports flag overflowing prisons with inmate account exceeding capacity in at least 26 states. The NHRC recommended filing position of prison welfare officers, probation officers, psychologists, and medical staff, further noting that the strength should be suitably augmented to include mental health professionals. There is an acute shortage of staff, a sanctioned staff of 3,497 people, out of only two, out of which only 2,000 roles were filed, was responsible looking after 2,25,609 prisons in the 2021. This number has shot up to 5,75,347 as of September 2023, according to the National Prisons Information Portal. Vacancies too are unevenly distributed. States like Bihar and Uttarakhand had over 60% of positions lying vacant. Moreover, the total strength of staff includes personal changed with medical, executive, correctional, ministerial, and other duties. Not everyone is trained to provide medical aid. Another recommendation is to allow inmates an adequate number of telephones with friends and family. Judgment also note that prisons should be allowed access to newspaper or periodicals to reduce the feeling of isolation and possibility of harmful literature, including a PG Woodhouse book Gautam Navalakha, citing security risk to prevent suicide. Sexually, guidelines recommended a strict check on tools such as roofs, glasses, wooden ladders, pipes, initial mental health screening at the time of entry into jail, and installing CCTV cameras to monitor high-risk inmates. Human rights activists have cautioned against the latter measure, as highlighted, surveillance would violate the rights of prisoners. Almost 1.5% of the prison population suffer from mental illness. For CHRIA report, it also flagged that of correctional staff, including psychologists, limited access to mental health care resources, inadequate identification of mental illness in inmates, along with the highlighted vulnerability and stigma. Mr. Cruz pointed out that major overhaul is possible only structurally. Both the public and official mindset regarding prisoners and an urgent revamping of the criminal justice system are sorely needed. The next जो है IAF likely to induct Astra B air-to-air missile by year end. The Indian Air Force (IAF) has played two contracts with the Bharat Dynamics Limited (BDL) for the indigenous Astra Beyond Visual Range (BVR) air-to-air missile, and the first batch is expected to be inducted by the end of this year, according to defense sources. Development is underway on the more advanced and long-range Astra Mk-2, defense sources said, and static firing has been conducted. The BDL has already received bulk production clearance for the manufacture of the Astra Mk-1 missiles from the Center for Military Airworthiness and Certifications. A defense source said, adding that this financial year the IAF will complete proof firing and induction. The Astra is fully integrated on the Su-30 Mki in August. It was successfully test fired from the light combat aircraft Tejas of the coast of Goa, during which the missile was released from the aircraft at an altitude of 20,000 feet. The IA plans to arm its frontline fighters with the Astra Mk-1, and officials have said that the Astra 2 would become the mainstay of the IF's BVR missile arsenal, reducing import dependency. In May 2022, the Defense Ministry signed a contract with BDL for supply of Astra Mk-1 missiles and associated equipment for the IF and the Navy at a cost of 2,971 crore. As reported by the Hindu, earlier the IF has expressed satisfaction with the Astra's performance, and officials have stated that they were looking for over 200 Mk-1 missiles initially. Then revision to July fuel shipments value lifts overall export figure. Goods exports revised upwards by $2.3 billion to $34.52 billion as petroleum tally raised by 51%. Revision narrows the trade deficit to a 3-month low. India's goods export value for July has been sharply revised upward by about $2.3 billion to $34.52 billion, driven by a 51% jump in the petroleum export tally from the month's initial estimate. This is the sharpest revision in export figures since March and implies that July's revised year-on-year decline in goods exports of 9.95 was the least since April, breaking a three-month streak of double-digit contraction. Quick estimates has pegged July exports at a 9-month low of $32.25 billion, translating a 15.9% YoY slump. This revised July tally also put August initially exports tally of $34.5 billion, which was reckoned to be a 3-month high in the said moreover with no substantive changes in the 52.9 billion merchandise dollar import bill for July. The trade deficit has also narrowed to a 3-month low of $18.4 billion from $20.7 billion estimate earlier. June's export had been revised higher by $1.4 billion, reviving a spate of such data revision that began in late 2021 and peaked in the last 6 months of 2022-2023, when the final tallies for exports were raised by almost $3 billion amount. Import numbers were also revised last year, with October to March seeing an average change of $1.8 billion, albeit with the upward as well as downward revision deficit implications. The latest upward revisions for June and July, after negligible changes in April and May, assume significance as economies expect the current account deficit, which rose sequentially in the first quarter of this year, to widen in the coming quarter, owing to exports shrinking faster than imports, thus broadening the trade shortfall. However, the final picture may turn out to be healthier than currently estimated if such positive revisions to in the initial trade data released by Commerce and Industrial Ministry extend over the rest of the fiscal year. As per the revised data, petroleum products exports, which were earlier reckoned to have dropped 43.7% in July to August to just $4.6 billion, ended up close to $7 billion, reflecting only 18.8% drop from July 2022. Officials had earlier attributed the unusually high revision to delay in the reporting of some petroleum exports, particularly from the units located in special economic zones. Over the past 2 months, the ministry has emphasized that the decline in India's export was disproportionately driven by a fall in value of petroleum exports. Almost half of the drop in export this year has been driven by the decline in petroleum prices, with these products export volume rising 6% during April to July, while prices were 27% lower than a year earlier. As per the quick estimate for August, overall merchandise exports declined 6.9%, while petroleum exports were reckoned to have slumped to 30.6% to 5.88 billion dollars. Then next we have Pakistan's inflation rise to 31.4% year on year amid high energy prices. Pakistan's inflation rate rose to 31.4% year on year in September from 27.4% in August. Statistical Bureau data showed on Monday as the nation reels from high fuel and energy prices. The country is embarking on tricky path to economic recovery under a caretaker government after a $3 billion loan program approved by the International Monetary Fund in July averted a sovereign debt default. On a month-on-month basis, inflation climbed 2% in September compared to an increase of 1.7% in August. Reform required by the IMF bailout, including an easing of import restriction and demand that subsidies be removed have already fueled an annual inflation which rose to a record 38.0% in May. Interest rates have also risen to their highest at 22% on Friday. The Ministry of Finance said in its monthly report that it is anticipated inflation remaining high in the coming months, hovering around 29 to 31% due to an upward adjustment in energy tariffs and a major increase in fuel prices. The report added that inflation was however expected to ease, especially from the second half of the current fiscal year that starts on July 1. Then next we have what are the Lagrange points and why is Aditya L1 headed to 1? What are the Lagrange points and why is Aditya L1 headed to 1? Some of the most amazing phenomena in nature, from the electromagnetic radiation and infrared vision to subatomic particles and cosmic rays, are invisible and we get to know them only through their various applications. This is true of Lagrange points as well. Points in space between the celestial bodies where a spacecraft stays more or less stationary as if held in place by some cosmic magnetic. The magnetic, of course, owes itself to the unseen forces of gravity exerted by these bodies. Lagrange points are found along the plane of two objects in orbit around their common center of gravity, where their gravitational force cancels each other, so that a third body of negligible mass will remain at rest between them. For example, the combined gravitational force between the Sun and the Earth equals the centrifugal force required by a satellite or an asteroid to orbit the Sun. Earth's central center of gravity at the Lagrange point. A satellite will keep its position constant relative to both the Sun and the Earth. Maths instead of law. Planetary scientists are fascinated by Lagrange point because they offer the best parking spots in space for satellites that is seen from the Earth. Lagrange points appear to stay motionless, and this makes them ideal for controllers on the ground to communicate with spacecraft stationed there. No wonder these locations are home to several astronomical observations that utilize their vantage position to have ringside views of the Earth in the backyard of the solar system, which would not be possible nearer to the planet. Lagrange point exists throughout the solar system due to this gravitational interaction between the sun and its retinue of planets and their moons. The point were named after the Italian French mathematician Joseph Louis Lagrange, who was born in January 25, 1736 in Turin, Italy. His parents wanted him to study law and enrolled him at the University of Turin, but as it happened, a 17-year-old Lagrange chanced upon a algebra proposed by the English astronomer Edmund Halley and was so intrigued that he decided to become a mathematician. Instead, he went on to excel in all fields of analytic number theory and celestial mechanics and became one of the youngest and brightest mathematics professor of his time. He subsequently moved to Berlin, where he worked on astronomy, mechanics, and calculus, resulted in several groundbreaking papers, including one on the moon's orbital dynamics and another on perturbations of the orbits of comets. The three body problem. The Lagrange point most important contribution were related to the so-called three body problem, which investigated the motion of the three bodies with mass relative to each other in space, such as the Sun, the Earth, and the Moon. The problem questions itself is if you know the starting position of the Sun, the Earth, and the Moon, you predict their exact location at a later date as they move under the influence of each other's gravity. Lagrange found that the problem could be solved if he assumed the third body was smaller than the other two larger masses. This eventually led him to describe the famous five Lagrange points that we know today as L1, L2, L3 and L4. L4 and L5. In any three-body system, there are three of these Lagrange points L1, L2 and L3 are unstable positions that lie along an imaginary straight line connecting two larger bodies. The other two L4 and L5 are stable locations that form the apexes of the two imaginary equatorial triangle with the two Lagrange large celestial bodies at the vertices of the each triangle. Point of accumulation: objects stay undisturbed at L4 and L5 because of the restoring force against acting against any displacement that prevents them from being nudged away from the stable point because of their stability. However, L4 and L5 also tend to accumulate a lot of interstellar dust and asteroids also asteroid called trojans that zip around the points. Scientists have detected nearly 10,000 trojans in the L4 and L5 points of the Sun-Jupiter system alone, where gravitational and centrifugal forces prompt the space rocks to follow the giant planet's revolution around the Sun. Astronomers have also found four trojans at Lagrange points around Mars and eight trojans in L4 and L5 points around Neptune, one of the Saturn's larger moons. Tethys Tethys even has two moonlets as at its Lagrange point. On the other hand, an object positioned at one of the three unstable Lagrange points L1, L2, L3 can be easily deorbited by even weak forces, and they will then drifted off into space. That is to say, a spacecraft at say L3 needs only the slightest disruption to slip and fall from its orbit towards the Sun or the Earth, unless it frequently burns fuel via its thruster at the various thruster at the various moment of displacement to adjust its orbital moment frequently. Importance for space exploration: without Lagrange point, space exploration would have been so restricted, with scientists struggling to find the best orbits and velocities for satellites and reckoning with the challenges of orbital perturbations. To think that space efforts like the Aditya L1 solar missions to the Indian Space Research Organization would never have materialized had an Italian boy Italian boy pursued a career in law instead of being distracted by mathematics in the 18th century. Aditya L1 is a space-based observatory that ISRO launched on September 2. It is now en route to its designated parking slot at L1 in Sun Earth system. Once it reaches L1 at a distance of 1.5 million km away from the Earth, the probe will settle into a hollow orbit around L1 to acquire an unobstructed view of the Sun. L1 is already home to four other robotic explorers: NASA's Solar and Heliospheric Observatory Satellite, Deep Space Climate Observatory, Advanced Composition Explorer, and the Global Geospace Science Wild Satellite. With the point will get even more crowded when the three US probes, interstellar mapping and acceleration probe near Earth objects, survivor space weather follow on Lagrange 1 and European Vigil mission begin their Lagrangian journey in the next few years. Sites of space colonies. Space scientists are also exploring the potential of L4 and L5 points to host space colonies in the future because these points are relatively close to the Earth, as these locations where the gravitational forces cancel each other out. Spacecraft will need very little fuel to remain in orbit or to launch into another planet, unlike launches from Earth that take up most of the fuel. Rockets carry this in theory allows space engineers to build habitable space stations at L4 and L5 using resources mined from the moon and or an asteroid. A big space station built in this way could be thrown on its axis using rocket thrusters so that the artificial gravity thus created would help a large number of people to live and work on board the orbiting post permanently. Then friends, आज का जो लास्ट आर्टिकल है, a very brief history of the Nobel Prize. Fall has arrived in Scandinavia, which means Nobel Prize season is here. The start of October is when the Nobel committees get together in Stockholm and Oslo to announce the winners of the yearly awards. First up and as usual is Nobel Prizes in medicine or psychology, which is announced by a panel of judges at the Karolinska Institute in the Swedish capital. The prizes in physics, chemistry, in literature, peace and economy follows with one announcement every weekday. The Nobel Prize were created by Alfred Nobel, a 19th century businessman and chemist from Sweden. He held more than 300 patents about his claim to fame before the Nobel Prize was having invented dynamic by mixing nit- nitroglycerin with a compound that made the explosive more stable. Dynamite soon became popular in construction and mining in the weapon industry. It made Nobel a very rich man. Perhaps it also made him think about his legacy because towards the end of his life he decided to use his vast fortune to fund annual prizes to those who during the preceding year have conferred the greatest benefit to humankind. The first Nobel Prize were presented in 1901, 5 years after his birth. After his death in 1968, a sixth prize was created for economics by Sweden's central bank. Though Nobel purists stress that the economics prize is technically not a Nobel Prize, it is always presented together with the others. One reason the prizes are so famous is they come with a generous amount of cash. The Nobel Foundation, of which administers towards awards, has raised the prize money by 10% this year to about $1 million. In addition to money, the winner received an 18 karat gold medal and diploma when they collect their Nobel Prize at the award ceremony in December. Historically, the vast majority of Nobel Prize winners have been white men. Though that's started to change, there is still little diversity among Nobel winners, particularly in science category. To date, 60 women have won Nobel Prizes, including 25 in the scientific category. Only four women have won the Nobel Prize in Physics and just two have won the Economic Prize. In the early days of Nobel Prize, the lack of diversity among the winners could be explained by the lack of diversity among scientists in general, but today critics say the judges need to do a better job at highlighting discoveries made by women and scientists outside Europe and North America. So friends, this is all for today and we'll meet from tomorrow onwards with new newspaper articles. So thank you. Thanks a lot.